Your network is your net worth. But does networking make you cringe? Yeah, me too. But we have Dawn here, and she's going to be telling us her different take on how we can look at networking in a way that's more fun and genuine. So I'm going to give the ball to you, and I want you to tell me a little bit more about what this means to you and why it's so important for other people to have a better understanding of how to approach networking from this unique perspective.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on the show. And, networking is really a spider web of connections. And that's where I always try to help people get a different perspective around networking. It's really about building connection and having that genuine relationship and finding those different ways of how you can really help support each other. I know networking, when you hear the word, it really makes people cringe. So that's why I always like using the word connection.
That's perfect. And I honestly, it's funny you say that because I've actually changed a few of the things, the labels in what I'm doing within all of organic content marketing to include a lot of those types of just term changes that are specifically designed to psychologically change the way you look at the action that's involved with those thought processes. So I'm curious, is that kind of the direction you were taking when you switched up and said, hey, look, guys, we're going to throw networking out the window, but we are going to connect?
Yeah. Well, I would say, I've been really trying to almost kind of coach people because there's, kind of reasons behind why networking really bothers people because they have had bad experiences. You know, of all the really salesy people that have been in your face that just want to give you a business card or maybe give you that pressure when you go to a place where it's like it's all about the sale. You need the next sale for your business. And so you're really not being genuine. And I think another thing too is when people think of networking, they're really scared that they're going to get rejected, kind of too. And so I've been really trying to coach people and really hone in on this because I haven't always been a networker in my life, and I had social anxiety. When networking was not my thing. And so this is where I've just learned different ways of how to build connection because deep down, when you have that trust, when you built that relationship, the sales are going to come or the opportunities are going to come because they're going to understand you as a person instead of what you sell.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually a famous quote. I can't remember who it's by right now, but it's something to the effect of when you start a conversation with somebody, regardless of whether the product or service is mentioned, that conversation can absolutely lead to a sale, right? The way you're branding, the way you're marketing yourself. Remember, you're never not marketing. That's
Hmm.
what winds up leading to the ultimate sale or the conversion of some sort that helps you to grow your business. So I want to just kind of live in this area where we start thinking about the still practiced, but in my humble opinion, outdated way of networking. And that is those breakout room style. You've got 2 minutes, elevator pitch, torture rooms, for lack of a better word. I have been grappled into so many of those, and I'd love to hear like your take on that. And maybe some of the pros and cons that you can see from maybe investing your time and sometimes even money into reaching out in these speed dating style networking events.
Yeah, I would say, well, I even think of before COVID, everything was
Mhm.
in person. Everything was, you'd go into an event and it was like, ugh, so many people, they're already clumped together. It was like they were already in their own little breakout rooms. And so then it's like trying to introduce yourself or trying to even meet new people. That's so challenging. And so when the pandemic hit, I almost kind of liked it because you were in those breakout rooms where that person had to meet you for once. And so that's where I try to come in with a different perspective on that of just you're getting that moment with that person for that amount of time. It's not about what I sell, but just like having those different things where you can have a conversation and having questions to ask people to really understand like what are they passionate about? What do they do even outside of work? What commonalities do we have? And that's where, I try to come with a different perspective or mindset about that. And that's where I try and influence other people too. If like there's some great pros, of course there's cons too at times with going to those different events, but just think how many new people you can meet outside of just even your community or why it's worth that time and energy to go to those events. And I think finding the people that Like, this is where me, I love holding space for people and making them feel comfortable. And it's not about what they sell. It's about finding those commonalities with the people and being genuine. And so that's where even during COVID, I started hosting a bunch of navigate or networking events because I wanted to hold space for people to connect, to collaborate. And I continuously have been doing that now. We're even in person. And sometimes you need to invest money in that. And not everything's for free. And I think sometimes, too, even for myself, it's been a shift of actually charging people to come to an event now. And it sometimes holds those people accountable and they're investing that time and that energy into it. And they're not just there for the free opportunity to throw their business card or to make all the connections with people or add them to the list or their marketing email. Like, it's about having that opportunity to actually get that human interaction, whether behind a screen or in person.
Yeah,
That makes
absolutely.
sense.
So what I'm hearing is that regardless of, because we're talking about making these genuine connections, and a lot of times people will disassociate that with the quick breakout room style networking events. But what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that like those events versus coffee chats versus more in-depth summits, or depending on, no matter whether it's this short intro to these long in-depth introductions, what you give and take from that is completely dependent on you and your intention and that what you bring to it. So if you
Mhm.
have a one-on-one 2 minutes and they say give your elevator pitch, perhaps you don't do that.
Yeah. I would
Perhaps you
say
do something different. What
do
does that
something
look like?
different. Yeah, I would say, I think that's the one thing that so many people have been taught to have that elevator pitch, which
Yeah.
maybe certain scenarios it works. But for me, it's like I don't want to hear your pitch. And so many other people are probably like that too. I want to hear why do you love working there? Or why are you so passionate about what you do? Or what are you intrigued with? Like what interests you? I want to know that more than what your pitch is. Yes, you can I just don't like that because it's so fake and it's not authentic. And that's the part where I go into these scenarios of being open-minded and not having it something that I'm memorizing. I'm going into it, I'm feeling the energy. I'm seeing what opportunities there may be that oops, what I just happened on my screen. Anyways, that I can really show up as me and feed off of the other people instead of the other way around where it's the old school way of things. It's like getting back to the basics of things and building a relationship with people and trying to build that trust. Um, and maybe that's just some of my trainings, but I feel that there's, the sales process, yes, the elevator pitches, there's the marketing, there's that in between too of just building connection. And that's where the sales will come or the things that you can market to them because you're going to be top of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was something interesting that you said about feeding off of them, like instead of you presenting whatever and them presenting and just letting it be, and you were saying you would feed off of them. But I'm going to argue, and it's
Yeah.
not an argument because I feel like we're kind of resonating the same way. They're going to feed off of you, right? This is really pivotal when it comes to showing up and marketing yourself, because those networking events are an opportunity to market yourself. That's all that is. um, and how you market, you're never not marketing. I can't say this enough. You're never not marketing. So when you're showing up for yourself in a networking situation whereby you are marketing yourself, you want to make sure that you're contagious. You
Yeah.
want to make sure that you're memorable. And if you're doing the exact same thing as everyone else, well, is that memorable?
Yeah.
Probably not. But if you take Dawn's approach and you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to show up as uniquely me, and I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to stay curious, and I'm going to present myself as who I am and what I love. And of course, affiliate that with what you do as well, because it would be foolhardy to go into a business networking event and talk about Picasso if that's not a part of your business. But
Mhm.
but you want to make sure that you're presenting yourself in a really authentic way, because that gives, not only is that good for you, but it gives permission, not that they need it, but sometimes people feel as though they do, for other people to do the same. So you
Yeah.
start talking in a certain manner, and so is like, wait, we're allowed to actually say that we're moms?
Yeah.
We don't have to pretend like we are these otherworldly units away from our family. Who knew? That's mind blowing.
Yes.
And that's just one circumstance.
Yeah, that's just one circumstance. And I think that's where too you'll probably realize there's so many more commonalities that you have with people than you ever got to experience before. I think we're so set in the cookie cutter way of doing things that unfortunately then we're missing the opportunities of where, wow, I think too, it's not always about what you sell, but it's a way for you to find that space to be vulnerable and to speak up, but also hear maybe they have a problem and you have a solution by an introduction that you could give to them or connection. It's not always what you sell, it's about how can you be a resource for them because when you can start becoming that master connector and connecting them to the people that they need to meet or the circles that they need to be a part of for their solution, that brings a big impact. And that's how you're even going to make even more of a memorable moment for them to build that trust because you're kind of helping them get to where they need to be too.
That is really cool. I'd love to. So I would love to hear you dive in a little bit more into the idea of being vulnerable and being that resource. Like, what does that look like in more circumstances than just your status quo networking? Like, what does that look like on the day to day? How can we bring more of that into our life and business?
Mm, yeah. Well, I would say, it's not being vulnerable by just spilling all of your beans of here's all my challenges. This is what's bothering me. And, I think um, a lot of our internal judge too will sometimes kick in of like you can't be too vulnerable to say what you're challenged with
Mhm.
because then that interpreting for them like ooh maybe they really don't know their business well. I think there's a fine line to showing up as your true authentic self and to know too we're all humans. There's always some kind of challenge or there's always some kind of piece of a project that maybe we're trying to work on or a thing that we're even working on for a client that, hey, what kind of perspective could you get from that person? Or maybe it's not a solution, but maybe it's advice or wealth knowledge transfer. Because I think that's the thing where so many of us are thinking like being vulnerable means, you know, telling all of my challenges. No, it's like, this is what I'm currently seeing with my clients. Are you seeing this also? You know, this is something that have you thought of this before with your clients, just different perspectives and being curious and seeing how it can be like a lasting relationship where you're always kind of learning and sharing knowledge with each other, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does, and I'm hearing that with regards to vulnerability in particular, you're saying let's be intentionally vulnerable. We're not
Mhm.
hanging our dirty laundry,
Yeah.
right? But rather we're bringing forth, like you say, perspective and transparency in such a way that allows others to feel as though we're all human, because indeed we are.
Yeah.
All right. No, that's
And I
really good.
love the words that you use there too, the transparency of things, because I feel that sometimes some people are really comfortable of giving and not always the best at receiving, like myself
Mhm.
even too, of we're always out there to try and help and give and do things, but sometimes some people love to give back to you also. So I think it opens kind of the door of the giving and taking and figuring out how to really be transparent but also be open-minded with each other um, can go a long way.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's you made me kind of smile a little bigger there, because you made me remember a story that my grandmother, she's 86, okay?
Mhm.
She tells me this story frequently because there are people in our lives, in her life in particular, who would say, oh, no, 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 let's just do it yourself. We don't need their help, because people offer, right? They see the white hair and they're like, oh, let me get that for you. And her sister or her daughter or whoever will say, no, no, we can do it. It's okay. It's okay. And my grandma's over there, let them help. Let them
Mm.
do that. It makes them feel good. Sure, I can
Yes.
open the door for myself. Sure, I can carry my groceries to my car, but they feel good to be able to help. So when you give that opportunity, you're actually doing a kindness. And I just thought when you were describing that, it just made me think, yeah, there's, 86-year-old women, wisdom. I guess
Wisdom.
those two words are synonymous. Are they not? Wisdom, women. Sorry. But coming from you here, just saying, open that door, be transparent, give yourself and others the opportunity to support, because that doesn't always need to be the sale. But when you open the door, it gives the opportunity for the sale. If you close the door right away, well, guess what? You're done.
Yeah.
Transaction over. That transaction of energy, regardless of any sort of monetary transaction, that transaction of energy is gone anyways, because you close the door.
Yeah. And it's automatically closed the door where you can't even ask for what you need sometimes, and I think that's where too, just think of moments where you've had such a salesy person in front of you and how it made you cringe. And that's why we get such a bad interpretation when it comes to networking, because of those bad experiences that we've had. So be mindful of that, of like even conversations that went really well. Why did they go well? Was it because you had a deep connection? You had that honest conversation? You had that opportunity to give or support, but maybe even the opportunity to even ask for what you need too? Because I think that's the part too where a lot of us need to learn how to ask for help or ask for advice or suggestions, because that's not always easy for all of us either.
Yeah, absolutely. I would argue that for most of us, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
We're very much in this mindset of, it's okay, I got it. I don't want to burden anyone. But understanding that usually it's not a burden. Like when somebody reaches out to me and it's a question that I can answer in like 2 to 5 minutes, I got you.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. If it takes longer than 2 to 5 minutes, I'm probably going to ask you to hop on a call. But that's just a matter of let's time is money, guys. Let's get to the point. Let's solve your problem and move forward. So no, that makes a lot of sense. You also said something else that I found really intriguing, and that is wealth knowledge transfer.
Mm.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because as a philomath, a lover of learning, the idea of pairing knowledge with wealth and then transferring that totally tickles my fancy. Like I went like, I don't know, the pointy-eared dog just whoop. Did somebody say squirrel or walk or treat? That was me.
Mm.
So let's
Yeah.
dive into that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, for me, I worked in wealth management for years, and, I was around money a lot and wealth. And one thing that I really learned from it was just the wealth of knowledge and how you can help really other people, that it's not always monetary. And we're never going to I feel like one thing in my life has always been I'm not smart enough, or I'm not as smart as everybody else. If you know everything, then you must be dead, is what I've learned also too. So be open to opportunities to continuously learn and to add more tools to your toolbox, or to be open for different perspectives, because life is all about the wealth of knowledge and the continuously learning more and to seeing what opportunities there are that we don't know about. And we're never going to just know everything. And that's easier said than done. But I think that's where trying to be open to different perspectives of people.
Yeah, it takes a certain amount of humility, right? To be able to humble yourself in such a way that um, allows you to be open to new experiences, to new information. Isn't there an Einstein quote about that? I should really probably find that. It's one of those quotes that you'd think would be on the top of your mind about, not if you think you know everything, then you probably are very ignorant, right? That
Mm.
you're absolutely daft. And in fact, I want to say that I don't think I dove into this on one of the first times I was describing the whole point of this podcast here was the idea, with this exact idea, that you may be an expert. Any one person may be an expert, and you know a lot about this thing. But what you know is just this tiny, tiny grain of sand versus what could be known in the universe. And even the most profoundly intelligent person in the world only knows a speck of what could be known. And so wouldn't it be just a waste to think you knew everything. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
a waste of opportunity. So no, this is beautiful, and it's also a really good introduction into. And now this will have to be our last, touch point, just for time. But the idea of within the concept, within the context of making connections, genuine connections, and advancing yourself in life and business, establishing yourself as a thought leader. What I just feel like this is very much in alignment with the idea of wealth knowledge transfer. Where do you think thought leadership sits in that conversation?
Mm, great question. Because when you say expert, I always too, like, it makes me almost kind of cringe sometimes. Where I'm like, I'm never an expert, because there's always opportunities to keep learning continuously. And this is where I think thought leadership is so intriguing to me, because this is where you need to show your perspective, but you need to be also open to other perspectives on things. And I think this is where there's always opportunity to keep learning, but also talk about what you know. Talk about the things that are top of mind to you, because it will help give someone else a different perspective that maybe thinks they are an expert at something. Um, you know, when I was in wealth management, we had a lot of red tape. We couldn't talk about a lot of things because, it was what, you couldn't talk anything about wealth. So I always try to give a different perspective. And I was becoming a thought leader and creating my own brand that I didn't even realize back then. And really, what I was just trying to do was to show how important it was to connect, or to be visible, or to talk about different things that didn't have to do with what I sold, which kind of gives a different perspective of that when it comes to thought leadership. But I think, continuously be visible, try new things. It's not about what you sell, but it's giving a different perspective to help other people learn from you. And, be open to continuously learn, even though you're an expert, you think, at times.
That brings me so much joy, that last little bit, because my mind was immediately going to this openness of you said share what you know, and then my mind went, and what you don't know. Be okay
Yes.
to say I don't know, because that gives you the opportunity to learn, because it's giving somebody else the opportunity to share. And I think that's really beautiful, and that's the power of using this unique approach to quote unquote networking, or connecting, true authentic connecting, and leveraging that for your personal and professional growth. I think that's
Yeah.
amazing. Now, because we're reaching time, but I want to ask you, where can people connect with you? Two things. Where can people connect with you? And then also, if you have any final words, some last, maybe profound or maybe just fun and silly thought that's coming into your mind as we close off this conversation.
Yeah. Well, I would say connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. Or feel free to check out my website, uniqueconnector.com. But really, deep down, like what I said earlier, is networking is all about the spider web of connections. So just think about that, how the spider web, how it weaves, those lines, and how we're all connected in a different way. And you know, deep down, just make those deep connections and be vulnerable. Like we were just saying, get a different perspective from people, be willing to support others and be a resource, and become that master connector to help other people, and not just sell what you're selling, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. You have so much to offer, and it blows my mind every time we connect. There's always something new that kind of comes up with regards to, and I have to say, and I'm not sure that I've said this before, but with regards to that word that you've said so many times now, is perspective. And
Mhm.
that right there, it in my view so far, and my I will be diving deeper into your world every single day, because I have been. But I think that that's, if anybody needs an extra push, a shove, for crying out loud, to dive into Dawn's world, it is perspective. You will gain so much perspective. And with that, I'm going to let you blush on your own time. Let's let's wrap it up. I hope you have a great rest of your day, Dawn. This has been an absolute blessing to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Loved it.
Chat soon. Get ready to dance, because that's